Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. That is Zach Lyons, and I am Braden Gall. And it is lovely to be here on a Thursday afternoon, starting to feel a little bit like spring, second weekend of the tournament. We are just a couple of weeks away from the Masters taking place down in Augusta, which means it's NFL draft season, baby. NFL draft season. How are you, Zach? Good to see you, my friend.
Official NFL draft season starts today.
And we're going to do a mock draft better than any other mock draft in the market because we're not going to actually
such a good mock draft. It's not really a mock draft.
That's exactly right. There are certain things that are great in print. You know, listicles, as we say in the business, ranking things, mock drafts, even mock draft simulators, great in print. You have to be able to see them, visually read them. They're great. Audio form, rankings and lists aren't all that great. I don't like listening to them, so we're not going to do that for you. But what we're going to do today, though, is we're going to take a look at the positions, and we're going to mock out what positions the Titans should be targeting in all 7 rounds, and then give you some names that we like, that we think are available in that range, because that's where we think there's quality depth that matches up with the Titans' needs, and we'll give you some players that we like in those positions. And that's the start of our draft coverage, because I know we've been talking draft for a while, but it's now officially here, as you said. It's officially official. So we're going to do that today on the show as well. We've got, of course, I'm going to talk some quarterbacks with you because I just haven't had a chance to talk quarterbacks with you. We haven't really talked about the quarterbacks at all. They're not really all that relevant to the Titans, other than they could absolutely change who is available for the Titans at number 7 or in the first round. So I'm just curious. I want to get your thoughts on some of the names that are available at the top of the draft. I've seen mocks, not to go back to it, with quarterbacks being selected first, second, third, and fourth, with as many as 5 in the first round. I want to see what you think about that, and we'll get your comments as well. So if you want to chime in, we got Team Ramrod in the comments. We got Chef Ran in the comments. We got everybody in the comments already ready. So if you would like, please share the product. A little thumbs up there on the YouTube page. Share it on Twitter. Share it on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube. We really do appreciate you guys and your support. So here's the other thing we're going to do today. While Zach is answering a question at some point, I will post the link to the draft party only inside our YouTube chat. It is not a public. I haven't posted the link publicly yet. We've already sold some tickets to Friday night's draft party, but here's what you're going to get courtesy of Sinkers Beverages. Thursday night, we got about 30 or 40 tickets, maybe a little less than that, maybe 30, 35 tickets or so for all you can eat, all you can drink. We're going to have a Thursday night draft party just like last year. Zach and I, there'll be some other folks there as well. We're going to do a live show right after the Titans pick. That'll be live stream here on YouTube and, of course, on the podcast feed as well after the fact. You'll get all kinds of fun, very lighthearted. Going to have a good time watching the first round like we did last year. Such a huge success. We're going to go back and do it again. And all the money, of course, will be given to charity, our kids' charity there. However, we're adding a Friday night ticket. It is more expensive because it's a far more exclusive event. You're going to get a 5-flight high-end bourbon tasting. You get off-the-record Q&A with Zach Lyons and some other folks, maybe even a special guest. And, of course, it's going to be extremely intimate, and we're not going to do a whole lot of live programming and content that night. It's just for the folks who come on Friday night to hang out with us. So those links will be posted in the YouTube comments here coming up shortly. Otherwise, shoot me a DM, shoot Zach a DM. If you want to shoot us a message, we'll make sure you get the link. But this is for our listeners, for people that sign up for the in-crowd at Sinkers Beverages, call the Kingston Group, etc. This is a closed loop here, Zach. This is about our community, and we want to take care of you guys, the community, because we know you care about the kids and care about charity work and you care about the draft and the Titans and everything else. So this is about all of us keeping it inside the family here. So
I like it.
All right. Yes, Elliot. Elliot says, I slid right into those DMs. That is absolutely true. And I believe Elliot already has a ticket. So Elliot's going to be there. He was there last year. So if you'd like a testimonial about our draft parties, talk to Elliot. Talk to our good guy, Elliot. He'll give you a great testimonial. Kenneth already says, feels like Harbaugh's blowing smoke about taking an offensive lineman. I don't know about that one. I don't know if I agree with that one. Jim Harbaugh loves to run the football. He loves offensive linemen. He loves big uglies in the trenches.
Loves them so much, he has never drafted one in the top 100 picks.
Yeah, well.
He just loves them. He loves them, though.
He's only had like 2 drafts, right? 3 drafts?
No, he was with San Francisco for forever.
3 years. He was there for 3 years.
That's it? Are you
He went
sure
to,
on that?
he went to 3 straight NFC Championship games after coming from Stanford and then going directly back to Michigan. So that's not a ton of drafts, but yes,
Two,
that's
3, 4. So 2011 through 2014. Okay. I'm
I was
gonna
I was
let's
at the Sugar Bowl.
between them.
I was standing at the Sugar Bowl for Ohio State when they were playing Alabama when they announced that he was going back to Michigan, and the Michigan man was there. So, okay, before we get into, I guess I'll let you count up what you're counting there, Jim Harbaugh draft picks, I guess.
Yeah, 14. So he had 14 top 100 picks, and he had 0 offensive linemen.
There you go. That team was pretty darn good when he got there, and he made them even better. But no, he likes running the football, and so I think everything is smoke at this point. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Harbaugh wanted an elite receiver for his starting quarterback. If he wanted a big ugly for his quarterback, I don't know. We'll see. I want to start with quarterbacks though, just because we have not talked about them on the draft, and I want to sort of find out if what you are in on or not, Zach. Like, I got a couple of random questions here because I've seen the depth of this class talked about. We talked about the class that the Titans took Malik Willis in, that there's a chance that next year's draft class could be like that. I'm not sure I'm there yet on that. There's still a bunch of good names potentially, maybe later first round picks, none of whom will grade out as high as Caleb Williams or Drake Maye. Are you Caleb Williams, number 1 overall, pink nail polish? Like, is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about the pink nail polish shit.
I don't either. I just
yeah, I think he's number 1. I think he was consensus number 1 for a couple of years now, and there's no reason for that to really change. And all it takes is to be number 1 is for the team at the number 1 position to take you. And so to me, it's like I think he has the most talent out of all the entire class. He may not be the most polished, he may not have the best technique, but I think he has the best of. I think he's pretty much I don't think he's generational. Of course, I don't think Trevor Lawrence was generational. So I have a high bar to reach generational. The last generational quarterback for me was Andrew Luck. Everybody else has not been that clean of a prospect, in my opinion, in certain areas of the game, as much as what Andrew Luck was. So do I think he's generational? No. Do I think he's Patrick Mahomes? No. Do I think that he can carve out his own path here to success with the Chicago Bears specifically? Yes, they have set him up for success. They've invested in it. And I think that unlike Justin Fields, Caleb Williams is 1,000 times the quarterback Justin Fields was coming out of college and will be the rest of the way.
I think if Andrew Luck is your bar for generational, then I'm okay with that, because I think the best three prospects that I've ever seen, and again, remember, one of these guys was debatable when when he was taken, but John Elway and Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning are like the 3 that I would be like are just physically, mentally, everything is there. And again, Ryan Leaf, who I've done a lot of work with, and I've talked to him about this, like he was viewed largely as the same type of prospect as Peyton Manning. The difference being the preparation. Like Peyton Manning showed up to interviews with a binder this thick, 3 inches, and dropped it on the table and said, "This is what we're going to do." And Ryan Leaf showed up in cargo shorts and flip flops. So it was very, very different after the fact. If you're saying who are like, could he be Joe Burrow? Right? Like, is Joe Burrow generational like Andrew Luck is? No, I agree with you on that. I don't think he is. But could he be that next tier? I think he could be. Which brings me to the other guys in the class. I'm seeing Jayden Daniels all over the place at 2. I know what he is. I think he takes care of the football. I think he's incredibly dynamic. I think he's like he is a really nice player, worthy of the Heisman Trophy, et cetera, et cetera. But number 2 overall, he is not Lamar. Lamar Jackson's like 215 pounds, and he still breaks every year. I don't know how a guy who's 180 pounds is not going to break.
I think Drake Maye's going 2nd overall. I think this is all just stupid. It's stupid. Drake Maye was it was Caleb Williams versus Drake Maye for 2 years, right? Like we were in preparation, preparing our bodies, preparing our eyes and minds for Drake Maye and Caleb Williams, right? And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, Drake Maye, he may fall out of the top 10, or everybody's like trying to find these flaws with Drake Maye for some reason. I don't get it. Drake Maye is going to the Washington Commanders. I'm convinced of it. I don't believe this Jayden Daniels hype train at number 2, but I do think other teams will like him. I go back It's like when the Washington team back in the day took RG3. That's taking Jayden Daniels to me. Like, I think that Jayden Daniels and RG3, because of their body type, are going to have the same kind of career.
Yep.
I think Jayden Daniels, is more polished as a passer than what RG3 was coming out, but they are so
He was pretty good, though.
They just play with such reckless abandon that I just can't get behind them as a passer or anything. I think Drake Maye goes number 2 overall. And so I go Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, and then I do think
hang on.
Daniels will be like number 3.
I agree with I think I agree with you. I think Drake Maye is clearly the number 2 pick. But taking Jayden Daniels at number 2 is the most Washington football team thing that I've ever heard of.
That's the old Washington, though. So we can't.
You're right. You're right.
Maybe they are. Maybe they are going to make a foolish move like that, and then you can say, well, it's just the same old Washington team, just with new ownership, and the new ownership is just as dumb as the old ownership. So, but I have to give at least them a little bit more credence and credit for their approach to the offseason. And then I also got to think, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, they may not be Dan Quinn may not be the most respected, head coach among us, but I think that he is a very good, smart football mind. And I don't think I just don't see Jayden Daniels being that pick. I just have a hard time.
I agree.
Those dots anywhere.
They are both fully formed, mature adults. That's what they are. And that is not something they've had in Washington for quite some time. So I agree. Yes, I think we can quibble over the upside of Dan Quinn, but he's a fully formed, mature adult football coach. Like he's not Jeremy Pruitt. You know what I mean? He's like an actual person that does this for a living. So I think Drake Maye is closer to being number 1 than he is to being number 3. How about that?
I would agree with that.
So
I think he's the clear number 2.
I agree. Here is my hot, this might be the hottest take that I have in the entire draft season. And it took me a long time to get here, because I do think this all ties to the Titans. Why are we talking quarterbacks? Well, it ties into the Titans because there are a bunch of teams behind the Titans that may move up in front of them to get a quarterback, may be interested at 7 if there's a quarterback available. And I think there's going to be a couple that are available. I don't know if Jayden Daniels is one of them. I do think that he goes pretty quickly. I think there's a chance JJ McCarthy is the better quarterback than Jayden Daniels.
I could see that being the long-term assessment, and I could see a lot of teams thinking that. Like that to the point of, I think it's just a case-by-case basis. So team by team is going to view them differently. But I do think, I kind of get the sense that the Patriots are going to go Jayden Daniels, but I do kind of see a JJ McCarthy kind of deal there as well. But I kind of think the Patriots are going to trade back. I could see the Vikings trading up for JJ McCarthy. But at the end of the day, I do think if someone were to trade up, they are trading up for JJ McCarthy. I think that's the big differentiation.
Okay.
I think that, to me, JJ McCarthy is the guy you trade up for. Jayden Daniels is the guy that you either let fall to you in some other position.
I think that's correct. I think that's right. And again, JJ McCarthy, I don't think was ever asked to do NFL things at Michigan, but the way he prepared and the offense he ran will prepare him for the NFL. Does that make sense? His arm is bigger and stronger than he ever was really asked to use it at Michigan. His athleticism is bigger and better than he was ever really asked to use it. Although when he backed up Cade McNamara 3 years ago, he was brought in as the ball carrier. He was brought in to be the running quarterback. So he's way better athlete, bigger arm. I think he processes really well. He's very, very young. He's been in a pro system with a pro head football coach for a long time. I think he is the guy that moves up boards. I'm not saying I necessarily love him as an option, but I think he's going to move up boards. I do think all 4 of them, and Ed's got a good question here. I do think all 4 of them go in the top 7. How about that? True or false?
I think so. I'm hesitant to buy on this whole the big quarterback stuff right now, because we've been bit in the ass by it before. All these quarterbacks are going to go really high, then they never do. But I do think that next year is different, right? So in the previous years, when people have said that, there's always already you got 3 or 4 quarterback prospects for the next draft that are probably just as good or better than this draft. Next year, it's not good for quarterbacks. If you need a quarterback next year, you are taking some big leaps, right? You're taking a leap on Shadur Sanders, and
Quinn
he's the
Ewers.
only quarterback right now that I can really tell you off the top of my head that's for sure coming out next year. That's any good, and he may not be good, and then you're gonna have to draft Dion with him, and who wants that?
I agree with you on that one.
I mean, I want it for other teams. By the way, if I were running a team, I do not want it. But
Here's who I think will be the
Dion.
number. Here's who I think is going to be the number one quarterback next year. I think it'll be Carson Beck. I think will be the number one quarterback next year taken in the draft.
That does not really instill confidence in anybody, right? Like, I mean, that's not a. That's not the level of any of these guys, in my opinion. Like, I think there's more upside even with a Bo Nix or Michael Penix than with a Carson Beck.
I would have Carson Beck 3 on this draft board. Of the not overall of the quarterbacks, I'd have him ahead of. I think he's better. People don't realize Jayden Daniels did not lead the SEC in passing last year. Carson Beck did, and Carson Beck was asked to come from behind against Auburn. Was asked to come from behind against Alabama. Like he was asked to do things in the fourth quarter and delivered almost every single time. I think Beck is undervalued in next year's class. Quinn Ewers is in next year's class. I'm not buying the Cam Ward stuff. I'm certainly not buying Shadur Sanders, although he's a great athlete. So here's ultimately the question. Bo Nix, I've seen now also mocked into the first round pretty consistently, top 15. I don't know if that's a thing that's going to happen.
Surprised by that.
I think so too. I think I think it was the Athletic that compared him to Drew Brees.
I mean, I guess I could see the Saints, or if they don't trade up, like the Saints or Broncos drafting Bo Nix. Like if they don't trade up, I kind of see that.
Well, the reason I think they're comparing him to Drew Brees, not only size and stature and sort of athletic ability, but also Sean Payton is there to draft a quarterback, probably, right, with the Denver Broncos. So, I think that's what it is. Ed says if the 4 quarterbacks go before the Titans pick, which to your point, Zach, could be fraudulent here.
It feels like it feels like it's real, but I hate having to rely on it.
Ed says, is there other players that are other than quarterback that would be worth trading up to the Titans spot at number 7? And this is not really a question. Good question, Ed, because we have not really talked about this. Like, would if the Titans are there, and we know that they are considering Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze or Marvin Harrison, right? That's certainly something that should be on their mind, on their board. They're certainly doing their diligence on it. We know that they need a tackle. We got this stuff. But if 2 of the receivers are there, is a receiver the guy people trade up to get? Because people don't normally trade up to get left tackle, right?
Right. I would say that if there's one of Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. and Odunze, okay, so 2 wide receivers, 1 left tackle. I do think the Bears could trade up 2 spots to get one of those wide receivers. And if you think about all they have now, they don't have a lot of picks. They have their 2 first-round picks, a 4th-round pick, and another pick. So they only have like 4 picks in this draft. But I do think that it's a 3rd-round pick. I do think that they trade. If you were the Titans and they come to you and you have Alt on the board, Odunze, and Malik Neighbors, I think you trade back and pick up a 3rd. You'd only get their 1st and a 3rd, and so you swap 1st. Move back 2 spots and pick up a 3rd-round pick. And you know why? Because Alt will be there at 9.
Probably. You're not trading up to get Alt if you're the Bears.
They're trading up for a wide receiver. Atlanta doesn't need a left tackle. Boom, you got Alt right there.
All right, let me ask you. I haven't asked you this either, and I'm curious.
You got one of the other wide receivers, right? Because they don't need a wide receiver either.
So here's the other thing I have not considered a lot of, but now that they traded away a 3rd-round pick next year, the Titans, and they are sort of a little bit more, I don't want to say win now is not what they're in, but like they're in more of maybe the window's 2 years instead of 4 years now, right? Because they went out and got what they got in free agency. Are you comfortable with them getting picks next year? Obviously, you'd have to get something extra. Let's say they go back to 11 or 13 or whatever it is, like whatever the number is. But the bulk of the return is for next season, a 1st-round pick next year, a 2nd-round pick next year. Does that make sense? Wait, what happens if the return is less about this year and more about next year, which doesn't help you win anything this year, but is that okay? What are your thoughts?
You have to get a second or third if you're trading out the first overall pick or the first round pick. You have to stay in the first round, and you have to get a day 2 pick in return. Then whatever is after that, I'm fine with. As long as those 2 things are there, I don't care.
So they get they go back from, let's say they go back from like 1 to 17. They get a third rounder only, but a first next year.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. I'm just curious because I hadn't really thought
that met my requirements. That meets my requirements.
Yeah, it does. I'm curious. Would you rather have a second this year or a first next year?
Second this year.
Okay. All right. I like that. We have not gone down that path. In the interest of new, fresh content, I just wanted to ask that question. Sinkers, Beverages, and Kingston Group. Let's get into the positional sort of mocking of the positions here. We're going to talk about some of the players we like at each position, but more importantly, where is the strength of that particular position inside the draft relative to where the Titans are picking? So again, we kind of, as an example, we're going to talk a lot about tackle in the first round because we know that's where the value is. So we'll kind of work through the entire draft for the Titans, 7 rounds, but we're going to kind of target some players and some positions for each one of those rounds and for each one of those things. So there you go. Okay. Sinkers, Beverages. I'm going to drop the link in right now. As soon as I ask Zach a question, I'm going to post the link into the comments. So make sure you check that out right around the 25-minute mark. And obviously the Kingston Group, buildkg.com is the website. I don't have to tell you what they are or what they do because they've been around for so long in this market and with us on this program that you should know that if you are buying or selling a house, talk to the Kingston Group. Okay? That's it. Just talk to them. They will help you take care of whatever it is that you're dealing with. Absolutely. So they'll take care of you there. So, okay. Kingston Group, Sinkers, Beverages. We appreciate them. Rate, review, subscribe, like the posts, all that good stuff. All right. Is it as simple as this is a great tackle class the Titans need to tackle and they're picking high in the draft? That's where you should be going here. I mean, it's kind of overkill, but I just want to, is there anything that people are missing about this?
Yeah, I think Malik Neighbors is number 1 on their big board, and I think Malik Neighbors is the guy there. If he falls, and even if Alt is there, I do think that he's the guy. Now, listen, they're always going to take a trade back, in my opinion, but I think Neighbors overall. And then I also would say this.
Can I ask you why you think that they have him at number 1 overall?
Yeah. Do you know Jamar Chase? Have you ever heard this story about how have you paid attention to anything that the Tennessee Titans have said? The Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell, and then also that they want playmakers, and then they want guys that can score points from any point on the field. That's Malik Neighbors. That's everything. That's everything that they want. They said if all things are created equal, they go with the guy with touchdowns. Well, first, all things are not created equal. Malik Neighbors is a better prospect on their big board than Joe Alt. I can go ahead and tell you that right now.
Odunze?
Secondly, even if things are equal, then they're still going to go Malik Neighbors. So to me, it's like it's Malik Neighbors, Malik Neighbors, Malik Neighbors. Now,
okay,
you ask about Rome Odunze, and last year. So I got a little conspiracy theory about Rome Odunze. Last year, TD went on Stillman and Company and for the TD Power Hour, and he talked up how coming out of the combine, the Tennessee Titans love them some CJ Stroud. They like CJ Stroud. They love him. And from there, the floodgates were open. The floodgates could not be shut, and it ruined. And the ensuing avalanche and tsunami coming from Diana Rossini and Rappaport and all these guys, that all started with Tehran. Now, I'm not blaming Tehran or anything, but I'm just saying that's the first guy that I heard mention CJ Stroud. And that was coming from the combine. And they couldn't get CJ Stroud. That's who they wanted. It's pretty, I think we all pretty clear that they really wanted CJ Stroud. Now, this year, Tehran has said that he has alluded that he doesn't think Rome Odunze is too high on their board.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
No,
so
he said that. You're right.
What's telling me is that he's heard something, right?
Not as high as maybe we think.
But what I'm saying is, what I'm thinking is that he's heard that. But they're wanting everybody to know they don't want Rome Odunze, and now they want Rome Odunze. So they're using TD to throw everybody off the track.
Opposite day.
Could see. I think there is a world where the Tennessee Titans have Rome Odunze ahead of Joe Alt. Am I willing to bet on that? No. But am I willing to sit here and still say that I think Rome Odunze is the best wide receiver prospect out of the three of them? He's the cleanest, in my opinion. He's got the athleticism. He has Malik Neighbors' athleticism, and he has Marvin Harrison Jr.'s size and route running. I
Ball
think he's the
skills.
perfect blend of the two. So I could see that Tennessee Titans may still have Rome Odunze 3 and Joe Alt 4, but I would say most teams probably have Joe Alt over Rome Odunze.
What's
So
your?
I'm kind of I go back and forth. It's tough. I am take Malik Neighbors no matter what. Okay. Because I do think that Malik Neighbors, the way that you can use Malik Neighbors instantly, he pairs well with both DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. Rome Odunze may be able to play in the slot, but Malik Neighbors can go into the slot. You scheme him open, he's going to break multiple tackles on as soon as it happens, right? He's your home run hitter. Rome Odunze is your steady guy, but I feel like he kind of falls into Marvin Harrison Jr., where he's like, Marvin Harrison Jr. is DeAndre Hopkins, Rome Odunze is Calvin Ridley. And so does that give you... And let me ask you this, Braden, because I brought this up at paulcarsey.com. If you take one of those guys, and people are going to call me crazy because it's like taking one step forward, 2 steps back. DeAndre Hopkins has some trade value. You could end up trading DeAndre Hopkins for a day 2 pick. So just want to throw that out there.
Okay,
I'm not calling it. I've not heard anything. It's just a observation.
Oh, you're saying the draft. Okay.
Is going.
All right. I like that. Okay. So here's where I fall on this. Harrison 1, Odunze 2, Neighbors 3 is my order. If we're just talking receivers, that's my order. I think Odunze is more DeAndre Hopkins and is a replacement long term for DeAndre Hopkins. Because I think he does. It's like the contested catch thing, the big radius, the win at the line of scrimmage, runs perfect routes. I think Neighbors has more work to do to become a professional receiver. Is he a little bit more bursty, a little bit more twitchy in the open field, more yak? Probably. But I think Ridley actually gives you that speed right now. And I think Ridley, and honestly, Ridley moving into the slot a lot this year is something I would like to see if they draft Odunze, for example, or Neighbors, or any receiver for that matter. Here's my weird, this is the thing that I cannot shake, and it's going to piss you off, and it's going to piss off a lot of listeners too, and I know that when I say it, but I can't, for some reason, I cannot shake it. I think they're going to fix Treylon Burks. Not permanently, not to be a superstar, but to be a usable number 3 receiver in the slot with Hopkins and Ridley, no pressure on him. They see the athletic ability and the raw talent, and they say, you know what? Every coach has an ego. Every GM has an ego. They think they can fix him. I for some reason, I cannot shake that from deep inside my cortex here. I don't know why, but it's in there. So that pushes us to offensive linemen, of course.
Yeah, and I think that they could think that to a certain degree, but it should not preclude them from drafting a wide receiver, right? Like at some point, they may preclude them from drafting a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. I wouldn't agree with that strategy. I think that's foolish. But if they get a Taj Washington or Malik Washington or Jacob Cowing, one of these guys that kind of fits something a little bit different in that day 3 area, then I could see that, like, okay, well, they're going to give Treylon Burks a shot, but he's going to have some pretty good competition, even if these are 4th or 5th round wide receivers. And in my mind, I think I have my top 3 wide receivers, Rome Odunze, my personal ones, Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Neighbors. Now,
okay, so you have them better than Harrison. Okay.
But I do think that I really do think that if you put out the tape, took away the uniforms, and took away the names on the back, and you put out the tape of those 3 wide receivers, I don't think that it's clear cut that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best. But I also think these are like 1A, 1B, 1C. Like, I think they're clearly the 3 best wide receivers in this class, but I think they all do something just a tad bit differently from the other. But I think Rome Odunze is the most complete one, in my opinion. Athleticism, drive, leadership, and athletic ability, and he's got the stats to back it up.
No, my big board would probably be Alt, Harrison, Odunze trade. That would probably be mine, with Neighbors as the next one. Like, you can't go wrong with any of the 3 of them if you're the Titans and you take them. It doesn't give your quarterback any more time to throw, But it does give you a pretty nasty trio quartet NWI at number 5. Like, it gives you an extremely deep receiver room, unlike anything they've ever had before. So what I don't love from this perspective, and this course sort of speaks to our mock exercise here that we're going to start to do at some point during the show today, which is that if you trade back and to 14, whatever the number is, that's where I don't want to see a receiver as an option. It's if you can get one of the 3 blue chippers, it makes sense to double up with Ridley and him, and then let Hopkins walk, and you've got your pair of receivers for Will Levis for the next 4 or 5 years. If you're trading back to draft Brian Thomas, or trading back into the 20s to take Xavier Worthy or something crazy, that's where it doesn't make any sense to me. Even if you're adding a bunch of extra picks, that's where it doesn't make sense. Get the blue chip receiver if you're going to do it, or at this point, take somebody in the 4th or 5th round. That's where I'm at, and we'll get to those picks in just a second. So,
yeah, I think that all makes sense. I agree with that.
So Joe Alt's been number 1 at tackle for us for a long time. I don't think anything's changed with you, but I want to know. Give me your order, and you can say this is at 7. You can say it's at 9. You can say it's 11 or 13. Those are all options for the Titans on the board. That's Minnesota, Denver, Chicago, I think, right? So give me your names in order, and is offensive line the only other position you're considering? Like, truly is the only other position you're considering?
I mean, I'm not considering. I saw Ramon say that if Joe Alt's not there, then you draft Dallas Turner, and I think that's insane. That's an insane thing to say, because I think that the reason why is because that means that Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze are there, and they fit. I mean, they are cleaner prospects than Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner is a very good prospect. He's a red chip prospect with blue chip traits, but I'm taking the guys that are pretty much almost, if they're not considered blue chip, they're pretty much like 90% blue, 10% red is kind of where I'm at.
What if it's at 13? What if it's
what?
Sorry, what if I didn't mean to interrupt. What if it's 13 and it's Dallas Turner?
Okay, we'll get to that. So if Alt is gone at 7, I'm trying to keep us on track here. If Alt's on at 7, okay, if he's gone, then Olu and Fuaga are the only 2, and Latham are the 3 offensive linemen I would take at 7 and be fine with and be comfortable with. If you were to trade back to 13, all those names still apply, and then I would be fine with Dallas Turner. I would be fine with also Olu, Fuaga, Latham,
Mims.
I would also be okay with Mims if you want to take the chance, but I would think I think I like Troy Fontenot out of Washington better than I do Mims at that particular spot. And then if you trade back, if you trade out of the teens, right? If you trade out of the teens, I am perfectly happy taking Mims. And I think Mims would be there, and I'm perfectly happy taking Mims. If you trade somehow for whatever reason, and you got some massive haul and you trade into the late 20s, early 30s, and Mims is gone too by that point, I'm taking Patrick Paul if it's an offensive lineman at that point. But at that point, the further you go back, the more I'm willing to be open to other positions that aren't interior offensive linemen.
Yeah, I like Kingsley as well, the kid out of BYU, I think. But again, he's after Paul in that late 20s range. Here's my order. I have the exact same 4. And I struggled with Mims because I think if he had played the entire season, there's a chance he's way higher up on the board for people. If
he hadn't gotten injured at the combine, he'd be much higher on the board. And listen, we shouldn't really knock him. That's the thing about the combine. I think the general public is knocking him down, him and Olu Fashanu down the board too much because of 2 things at the combine: getting injured at the combine and Olu having small hands. And you're just totally throwing tape out the window. You're throwing all logic out the window over those 2 things. Same with Latham, not testing athletically. You can't throw those things just out the window. And I think everybody's now too low, at least on Mims and Olu compared to what they were.
So my list, I don't think my list has changed actually through all of these things. I've got Alt 1, Fuaga 2, Fashanu 3, JC Latham 4, Mims 5 in that order. And I think there's the top 3 I think are better than the other 2. But if Latham and Mims are available and you're in the 13 to 17 range, I love the value there at that position. And again, that would
See,
be
to me, I think if there's any offensive lineman that he's finally going to draft in the top 5, Chargers. If Chargers are going to draft, I think it's J.C. Latham.
interesting.
I
Okay.
don't think they're going to draft Joe Alt because J.C. Latham is a right tackle. He's played right tackle and he's a better
Road grader.
road grader
Yep.
than Alt. And I think that matters more to Greg Roman and company than them. He's kind of like Orlando Brown, but more athletic, in my opinion. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna assume that Stoney's applauding my rankings here. I don't know if that's what he's doing, but I don't care. That's what I'm gonna take it as.
I think he was applauding my rant on people being too low on Alu and and all these guys.
Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group, of course, are bringing you. By the way, the links are in the YouTube. I posted the Thursday night ticket link and the Friday night ticket link in the YouTube comments there. So if you listen to the show via podcast, the links are there. They're all over the website. We are not out there posting them because we're trying to get. We want to be loyal to the audience and to you folks, and we're gonna have a really great time, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. And all the money goes to charity, every penny of it. Okay, so that brings us to the second round. And my first instinct, I'm gonna throw a weird name at you and see what happens. My instinct is front 7 player is now the focus at 38. I like the edge depth there. We'll get to some of the names. I like defensive tackle or lineman to pair with Simmons there. We'll get to some of those names. And in theory, if you knew you had the guy, and I'm not saying that I know that or that they know that, but if you know you've got the guy at middle linebacker who can be your linebacker, Fred Warner, for the next 10 years, then you better be certain of it, and I'm okay with that being an option at 38. Here's a name I want to throw out there, though, and I don't think he gets to 38. I think he goes in the first round, but I do think it's worth considering. If Cooper DeJean is there at 38, I really like that pick for the Titans to play safety next to Amani Hooker, not corner. I know it's a little weird, but I just want to throw that out there.
I wouldn't be upset per se, but I would say that I have a hard time trusting people that come out of the Iowa defense, that is, or defensive backs, because it's Monty Hooker and Desmond King are the last two, and it's because of how they play the defense in Iowa. It's not a lot of man. I need to plug in Cooper DeJean or DeJean in the in some of the stuff that I have set up for safeties and see where he ranks and stuff. But
athletically, it would
like
be off the charts.
Watt. I feel like if you're moving a corner, a zone corner that does not play press man coverage safety, I think that if you're going to move a corner to safety, I would rather spend a pick on Ryan Watts later on down the road and get someone that's just as athletically gifted as Cooper and do it that way. But I'm not really sold. And I know that's a lot of scouting the helmet, but it's also kind of scouting the system.
Very well coached, though, on defense. Extremely well coached,
but I mean,
fundamentally.
Everybody's like, who was the guy last year? Riley Moss, that everybody was really big on, the cornerback from Iowa, and he was super athletic, and whatever happened to him? Nobody's heard of him since then. And so,
it's just because he's white.
Yeah, Cooper's a better safety prospect for sure, and I agree with you there. You move him to safety. He's not a cornerback.
I think he's going to be a great
and
safety.
Really, QC Hawk brings up a great point here that is that he's elite punt returner. So now with the new kickoff rules, there's some extra thing, and I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be there, but if he was there, I could see the vision. I just don't agree that the player fits the vision.
Does that make sense? Yes, and part of the reason I got to this was there's corners that I like. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry if he falls. I Lassiter maybe if he falls. Like there's other names in the secondary that I like, but they just don't need they have 3 starting corners, so they don't need to invest in that position. And the only other safety that I even like at all that I would even consider is Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. And I think that's a little early for him. So really the only other position on defense.
If I think Tyler Nubin probably goes in the first round. And if he does not go in the first round and he's there at 38, you should take him because I think he is clearly the best safety. And if it's too early for Tyler Nubin to draft a safety, it's too early for Cooper to draft a safety. That's
I
where
wrote
I would be.
those are the two names I wrote down because I wrote down front seven and then I've got front seven names here. The only names on defense that I wrote down that I would even consider at that spot are Nubin and DeJean. Like if those two guys are there, I would think about going starting safety. But
I
otherwise, if
would
it's
go
not, I go the other way.
McKinstry if McKinstry fell. And I don't think he will, because I think he's kind of like in that group of players that everybody's really low on for no
I
fucking
agree with you.
reason.
I agree. With you.
But if McKinstry, I've seen McKinstry slip to that second round on mock drafts. And I get it. They have L'Jarius Sneed, they have Cheeto, but they also only have those guys. They only have Cheeto for really 2 more years. Those guys can get injured. Cheeto coming off an injury, Sneed, battling through injury. And in today's NFL, it kind of helps to have 3 outside corners anyway. And McKinstry is a guy that plays a lot of man. He's really super smart. And I mean, he was a guy that played immediately in Nick Saban's defense, which is really hard to do for a freshman. So to me, I would add McKinstry to this list of Cooper and Nubin, and I would put McKinstry over both of those guys. I go McKinstry, Nubin, but all of these positions are behind defensive line and edge for me.
Agree. And that's going to be the real focus in the second round, in my opinion. I just wanted to throw some names out there and say, because I agree with you. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is the better prospect at what he does than DeJean or Nubin, but I don't think in the world of positionless football where they need guys that are versatile on defense and have 3 corners that play the 3 exact roles they need. I see a lot more value in a safety who can play man corner if he needs to, can play zone corner, can play up into the box, can play high point safety, can play 2 high safety look. Those guys seem so much more valuable than a player like McKinstry, even though I agree with you, McKinstry is the better player.
The problem is that safety is not as valuable as cornerback.
I agree.
So that's kind of where I'm at on that.
That's totally valid. Okay, so edge rushers. How many are gone in the first round? Is it Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, Latu, Chop Robinson? How many guys are gone in the first round?
It'd be Verse, Latu,
Turner. That's it.
Turner. I think that's about it. It depends on what you think about Darius Robinson, if you put him at edge or defensive line. But I'm at the point where I had when I was going through the listing of trying to figure out how many players are really by position, how many offensive tackles are going, how many safeties, blah blah, in the first round. Got to about 28. So there's about like 4 spots in the first round where you're kind of like, they're your wild card spots. Like Darius Robinson could be that guy, right? Like Darius Robinson,
Xavier Worthy,
first, but you can see him at 38. Xavier Worthy, I think, will go into the first. Though now I kind of think that maybe he doesn't because Hollywood Brown went to the Chiefs, and I was thinking Xavier Worthy. But I do think that when you look at it, it's like it's Latu, it's Turner, and it's Verse, and that's about it. And that I think Darius Robinson falls into that, but at that point, I'm not really ready to say it's 100% for sure happening. But I would say about 3.
Here, I think 3 almost. If you're going to say this, 3 guarantee with a chance for 2 more. The 2 Robinsons, Chop Robinson and Darius Robinson, could both be first round picks. Both could be there at 38. And I like Darius better. I've been pretty consistent on this. I have Darius Robinson as the 4th pass edge rusher. I'm going to put him at edge for the sake of this conversation. I would have Chop Robinson behind him. I don't think Marshawn Kneeland is an option at 38. I think that's way too early, but he's really moving up boards. You've got Chris Braswell at Alabama. You got Braylon Trice at Washington. The name I want to ask you about, though, is Jonah Ellis. He's undersized. He's more Harold Landry-ish at Utah. What do you think about Jonah Ellis? He's moving up boards real fast right now.
Let other people overrate Jonah Ellis. That's where I'm at. I saw Chris Sims put out like Jonah Ellis out there, and I think he is I don't like Jonah Ellis as an edge rusher. In general, he's kind of like Chop Robinson to me. And like both those guys to me are higher from the draft nerd side, but I don't feel very confident that they are going to be anywhere close to even Harold Landry stats. Like to me, they're just something about him on tape when you watch, Chop Robinson is all athleticism and that's all he's got. Jonah Ellis is all strength and no flexibility and no bend and all this kind of stuff. To me, if you're talking about one of those guys, to me, this is where I got Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, Darius Robinson, Latu, Chris Braswell, Adisa Isaac is how I have that going.
All right, so you be good
but
then
I'm
with
not taking
Braswell at
Adisa
38.
Isaac really at 38 either. Because I think the only guys that are really worth that 38 pick are Braswell and Robinson that could potentially be there. Neither of those guys there. You just need to shift gears.
Darius
Hopefully
Robinson
trade out.
Darius Robinson is the guy I want. That's the guy I've always wanted. I've said that I think for months now. If they can get him at 38 and he falls, that's the guy I want. I have Braswell ahead of Ellis as well. I think Nealon is
Darius
sort of in
Robinson's
that Ellis.
getting the popular Danico Autry comp that me and Stoney have originated. So I like to see that everybody else is finally catching up with us.
So Braylon Trice not an option there. I think trade back is if those are your options at outside linebacker / edge, and that's the position you need to focus on. I agree trading back. Here's a question from Stoney that I think is the next in this group in this conversation. Any inside linebacker even remotely interested at number 38?
I'm not. There's not a linebacker that can get me excited there at that spot. I think Edgerrin Cooper has really big flaws. I also think Peyton Wilson has really big flaws. I think that Junior Colson is likely the only guy that I think Junior Colson is the guy that has the least amount of flaws, right? The least amount of cons, the least amount of weaknesses, however you want to put it, out of the entire linebacking group that's considered the top of the class. And 38 is too rich for that. Now, I am fine if you trade back, you pick up some picks, and you're picking in 40 or 50 or 60, then I'm fine with drafting either of those three guys. But at the end of the day, I think that your better value comes in day 3, and you could pick up 2 linebackers, one that can start for you, and we'll talk about those guys later, and then guys that can push, Kenneth Murray, Jack Gibby, Chance Campbell, and those guys out of, push them up the depth chart.
Stoney says, I could cope with Wilson or Colson through tears if you just show me Jack Gibbons highlights again. I think that's sort of, people are going to forget how tough it is. I like Jeremiah Trotter, says Chef Ran. QC Hawk says no Jack Campbell this year, even though he ended up in the first last year. Was he a second round pick? I can't remember. My order is Cooper, Colson, Trotter, Wilson, and none at 38.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'd go Colson, Wilson, Trotter, then Cooper.
Okay, same top 4, but not at 38.
To me, I'm measuring though on green dot, the ability to be the green dot, so that weighs heavily more than someone that could play the role that Kenneth Murray's coming into play. And I think Edgerrin Cooper is kind of like Kenneth Murray. They'd be running into each other if they were both on the same team. They would have no clue what they were doing in coverage. So to me, I'm looking for the guys that can command the defense, and I think Peyton Wilson can do that. Yep. I think, Chef Rand agrees. Cooper's a duplicate of Murray. I think Colson, I think Peyton Wilson, I think Jeremiah Trotter can all do those things way better. The stuff that's in between the head, and the ears, better than Edgerrin Cooper.
I think Colson is the most prepared for the position of green dot linebacker. I think he's been asked.
Trotter probably is the second most prepared.
He's done the same thing.
Peyton Wilson's the third most prepared.
Both of those guys played in very professional-like defenses. Both those guys for Clemson and Michigan, and were asked to be veteran leaders on those groups with some good players around them. So again, I don't think 38's there. So which brings us to, we covered edge, which really just brings us to the defensive line. How many are going in the first round? Probably Byron Murphy out of Texas, probably Newton out of Illinois. That might be it, right?
Yeah, Braden Fisk could sneak in. He could be a sneaky guy to sneak in. Other than that, I think you get to a good value there. You got Rook Ororo. You got Chris Jenkins. You do have Tavondre Sweat and Brandon Dorless. Now, if you go on PFF, they're not going to have them very high. But at one point, they had some of these guys going in the first round, and now they don't. And it's because of various little things. And to me, all these guys are worthy of the 38th pick. So I would be, they all provide you something different, right? Like Rook and Tavondre are more of your big body guys that can play up the nose tackle. I would say Brandon Dorless and Chris Jenkins can kind of be that flex inside-outside technique defensive lineman, and I'd be fine with both of those. And I'm good with Braden Fisk too, and in that if he falls in that 38, but I kind of get the feeling that he's going to sneak into that into that first round.
I have Fisk as the number 3 D lineman on the board, and if he's available at 38, I think you take him. I think that he's there with Darius. He and Darius Robinson are like my top guys. Like if you're looking at those two positions to sort of fill out the rest of the line around Jeffrey Simmons, those two guys are more versatile, can do a lot of things, and you can kind of play them around the line. Chef Fran says, I like Leonard Taylor out of Miami, a big guy there. There are some different things. I'm surprised to see Chris Jenkins and Dorless mentioned at 38 for you, but it's almost more because the position of need, and there's just not a lot of depth at the position. Now, I will say, and we'll get to this later, there are some intriguing D linemen later in the draft that
Yeah, I mean, let's just skip into the fourth round anyway.
Let's go to the fourth round, right?
I mean, you can get some wide receivers and some cornerbacks. If someone falls, you take them and they're the best player available. But the likelihood of that happening and passing one of these guys, I'm not really gonna be there on that. But I do think that when you talk about like Dwayne Carter, McKinley Jackson in that fourth round spot, so the fourth round and fifth round are really some sweet spots in this draft. Because I'd be willing to go, depending on how the other draft goes. You got Dwayne Carter, McKinley Jackson. I'd be safe with both those guys in the fourth round. I would also be happy with taking a Chris Abrams drain, a Max Melton as well, and a Jarvis Brownlee Jr.
Yep, love all those
as well guys. in that fourth round, even in the fifth round, right? Like, but some of these guys could be in the fifth round too. A guy that I really like, and you're really reaching on the positional value, and you may be reaching on the player, is Jordan McGee out of Temple. I think that he is likely the most talented out of all the linebackers in this draft.
You've been on him for a while.
I saw him play. I watched his North Texas tape, and the only issue with him is that, like, if he gets squared up with an offensive lineman or a tight end, it's over. They when they get their paws on him, it's over. But if he could take an angle because of his athleticism, he's going to get that. He's going to get the ball carrier. He's good in coverage. He has good closing speed. He's got good size, and he is a guy that I fully trust could come in and wear that green dot. He's a team captain. He's been voted on and all that kind of stuff. So to me, I'm looking at those guys as that. But my favorite pick is doubling down on tackle and getting Christian Jones in the fourth round. If he is there in the fourth round,
I like Christian Jones
run to the podium, especially if you have Joe Alt, but you run to the podium for some Christian Jones in the fourth round. And I don't know if he'll be there, but like Christian Jones in the fourth round would make me horny AF.
Chef Fran says, how y'all feeling about right tackle in the fourth, right as you begin to talk about Christian Jones? Christian Jones is basically, after you get past the first two rounds, and Christian Jones is the only offensive lineman that I'm really interested in. Like he's kind of the only one after the first two rounds. And I'm talking about, Patrick Paul in the early second round, or, Kingsley out of BYU early second round, like Guyton early second round, whatever. After you get past that group of guys that are clearly like the top 7 or 8 tackles, a bunch of those guys are guards too, right? The kid Barton out of Duke and Fontenot out of Washington, and like there's a bunch of other guys, right, that are in that group. Offensive lineman, Oregon, all those guys. After you get past that top tier, Christian Jones is the only one that I'm like, that's the guy I want. Like if I'm doing mock drafts, I'm targeting him in the 4th and 5th rounds. I think 4th round is probably where you're going to have to take him if you want him. But I agree. I think it's a ton of upside. I think it's an investment. It's very MPF-ish, actually. A guy that had a ton of pedigree coming out of high school, played at a big time school, still has some room left to develop, but very good athletically. He's very similar to what they did when they took NPF, in my opinion, in the 3rd round. So here, let me lay this out. So it sounds like first round mock position, offensive line receiver, pretty comfortable there. Outside chance at edge if they trade back. Second round, you can get a high-end edge or a high-end defensive lineman, probably where the focus is. Maybe a safety if you think the best guy is there.
Whoever may be the falling player candidate through the draft, right? Because there's always that one guy that keeps on falling. You're kind of like, why is that guy falling? And we don't know why, but sometimes, but it's kind of like your Harold Landry position, right?
Christian Fulton.
They Harold Landry fell, Christian Fulton fell, and they have varying degrees of success in the NFL. But there's always a guy that's you're kind of surprised fell out of the first round. That could be that leaves you open for like a Kool-Aid McKinstry, maybe a Cooper, like you say, could even be maybe one of the other. Maybe there's only 2 edge rushers that go.
Yeah,
something crazy like that.
So if they go offensive line and front 7 in the first 2, what is your priority positionally then once you get to right around pick 100? It's like, what is it, 106, 107? I think it's 107. When you get to that pick, is your priority? I don't think it's depth at receiver or corner just yet, but I like all the names you mentioned. Like you threw out a bunch of corners that I really like too. I like Christian Jones a lot. It's certainly not time for safety or running back at that point. So what do you do with that position? If you've gotten, let's say hypothetically, you get Joe Alt and Chris Braswell. I'm just going to use something that's sort of more possible, right? I would love to see it be Darius Robinson. I don't know if that's going to happen. So I'm just trying to come up with something possible. They go with Joe Alt and Chris Braswell. All right. It's a big influx in your trench warfare there. What are you focused on then at the start of the 4th round?
I think in the 4th round, it's just best player available, right? You still have a big hole at linebacker, but at that point, if you're not too concerned about that hole, and you're not going to take like one of the top linebackers that should be there at 38, then you're probably not that you probably like the depth that you have in this draft on day 3, because I do think there's a lot of more day 3 guys that maybe have limited upside, but can provide you a good complement across from Kenneth Murray. So I think it's just best player available, because if you got Chris Braswell and you got Sebastian Day, do you really need a Dwayne Carter or McKinley Jackson? No. But if they're the highest ranking guys on your board, you take them. The same thing like you have L'Jarius Sneed, you have Roger McCreary, you have Cheeto, but Chris Abrams-Drain, Jarvis Brown-Lee, who have 230 visits lined up. And then you have also a Max Melton, who I think they are probably really going to like. And he's getting day 2 buzz. If they're there, okay, those guys could be the best available. But also Taj Washington, Malik Washington, maybe a Javon Baker, Jermaine Burton guy falls. But like there's also wide receivers. To me, when you get to the 4th round, you still have, when you talk about depth, you still have depth, even though it's very limited at offensive tackle. You still have a lot of depth at wide receiver, and you still have a lot of depth at cornerback. So those guys will technically likely be those position groups will likely have a lot of players that are at the top of their position on their big board, right? And so when they say they play the board, roll the dice, play the board, I would not be surprised that they double down on either offensive tackle or a hole that they filled in free agency in the 4th round.
Is there any linebacker that you like? McGee is the one that you said you liked, but like, is there anybody that you think is in between McGee and those top guys? Like whether that's, Jalen Ford, Cedric Gray, the 2 kids out of Ohio State, Eichenberg or Steel Chambers, like anybody, or are those guys actually more like
I'm staying away from Steel Chambers. Steel Chambers is do not draft Steel Chambers. And I don't think they'll draft Steel Chambers. He is not very productive. He's not that great athletically, and he's not that great in size. So he kind of doesn't he's very 7th roundish UDFA-ish. I don't know if I really have
Hopper,
a linebacker to be willing to take in the 4th. No, Hopper is way out. He may be just as bad as the
Notre Dame guys.
No, I would say that in the 4th round, no. I think Maggie. I don't know if it's Maggie or Majee, but because the film doesn't have audio, so don't hear what they say on all 22. But I think that at the end of the day, Braden, even drafting as much as I like Jordan, even draft him in the 4th round is a big risk.
Yeah,
5th round seems more appropriate, and I think I'd be fine with him, Trevin Wallace, Edofan Ulofoshio out of Washington. Those guys, I think there's a lot more linebackers in the 5th round and 6th round that'd be more comfortable taking. And I think there's a lot of 7th rounders in linebackers. And you mentioned a couple of them, Tyron Hopper. I'm not a big fan of either of the Notre Dame guys. I'm not really that big of a fan of either of the Ohio State guys. So that's kind of where I'm at linebacker. Okay. You can still get quality players in the 7th, but at fourth, I think Jordan is the only guy. And even then, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I do it.
All right. So, because it sounds like what I've got here is O-line, wide receiver in the first round, good value. Edge, D-line, 38 second round, no third round pick. Best available, but when I'm hearing you say best available is wide receiver, corner, Christian Jones is sort of where you're at with best available in the fourth round. So that brings me to, do we like Jordan Hicks? Do we like Kalen Bullock? Do we like Javon Bullard at the top of the fourth round? That's safety.
You could talk me into Javon Bullard. That's kind of where I'm at on the safeties. I do.
He's my favorite of the second tier safeties, like of the later safeties.
Yeah, I will say, give me 1 second because I don't want to try to butcher his name. I'm going to do it. Taylor Dimerson. I'm not going to try his first name. Dad Orion. But Taylor Dimerson is a guy that's really piqued my interest through this. I do like Malik Mustafa as well. I think he has good tape, but I don't like his size. Those are guys I could see going to the fourth as well as a Javon Bullard, but I do think that all these guys like Jayden Hicks, Javon Bullard will go early. A guy that I'm not in on, Cameron Kitchens. So I'm out on Cameron Kitchens.
I'm with you on that.
In the entire draft, in my opinion.
There's two names that I think, and we're kind of running long here, but I think Jalen Simpson out of Auburn and Tyke Smith out of Georgia, those guys are later than even Javon Bullard, in my opinion. But I think those are two names that I really like in the more like the sixth round. So sounds like best available for the fourth round. And
that's kind of where I'm at in this sixth and seventh. I mean, the fifth is a lot like the fourth for me.
Okay.
So my philosophy in the fourth and the philosophy in the fifth is kind of the same. It's kind of all these guys. You may add a couple of the names of linebackers that threw in there. Maybe you add a Jalen Simpson in there, or Cole Bishop as well if you want to at safety. But it pretty much is kind of like that fourth and fifth round is going to be kind of wild. I think there's going to be so many good players. There's going to be so many trades that's going to be really hard to pinpoint where they could go. But as far as where they probably want to go, I think it's a lot of, okay, who's the best player available? Has Chris Abrams-Drain still there in the fifth?
Yeah.
Then you take him.
But
sixth and seventh for me is like linebackers and safeties. That's where your value's at.
Okay, so that's it's funny you're going to say that because I could see them going safety linebacker in the fourth and fifth to get their best guy of that group that would be available in the sixth. Does that make sense? Like
yeah, I mean that's quite the reach, but like I do think that like a Dejon Anthony, I'm not a Katana Oladapo is a guy that I think they're going to be really high on. He seems to fit what they want. The safety out of Oregon State. Like to me, I'm looking at the sixth and seventh round, and I could see linebacker, safety, linebacker, safety with those last four picks. Like I could see it. And I could see also maybe sneaking in a running back in there at some point.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I do think that, like, look at, okay, again, we're talking about the new kickoff rule. Okay. Tyler Owens may not be a great safety, but he sure damn good could be a good returner with that speed. And so I kind of feel like they're going to be filling out their special teams with some high upside players. And I think there's a lot of guys in that linebacker safety group that can kind of be project day one starters, maybe push for camp and be in a rotation. But I think that they're looking for guys that could be something in year two out of those positions.
I am very torn on receiver and corner because I think receiver and corner is so good in this draft, especially at the top of the fourth round. Maybe even at the late second or third if you can find a way to get extra assets. I really like the value at those positions, but they just spent almost $200 million on those two positions. And I'm sort of torn on how they view the depth and the value of those players versus they need a middle linebacker. Like they need another safety. Like these are guys, those are running back. I think running back is the one I'm pushing down
for
the
need. I think we both agree. And with what I'm about to say, but drafting for need is not the way to draft. That's how drafting for need and making reaches is how you end up like John Robinson. That's how you end up on the street. I think because everybody made fun of it, but I think for every player they drafted last year, there's an argument of why that player was higher on their draft board than a position of need like wide receiver. I think you can make an argument for everyone.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
And so I think that's how it's gonna be at this draft. And in that the position may be linebacker or safety that they wait on because I do think that I don't think they're going to reach for those necessarily in the 4th round. I think you can maybe see a reach in the 5th, but I don't think in the 4th. I think 4th is still firmly going to be, and I think the whole draft will end up being best player available.
The argument for last year for Tajay Spears, for example, is you're playing the long game knowing Derrick Henry's not a part of the organization long term. That is where wide receiver and DeAndre Hopkins is the parallel to me.
And outside of Puka Nacua, Michael Wilson, you're not talking about a lot of wide receivers that were drafted after Tajay Spears.
No, of course not.
Right? I mean, like, there's not many in the NFL.
I just mean that to your point, like, you can come up with the line of thinking. The line of thinking is, we don't have anybody on the roster we like outside of Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry's ass is gone after this season. We need somebody.
Yeah.
And Spears, we like a lot. He can do a lot of things. He's versatile. He's a modern NFL running back, and he fell to us. And to me, that was them playing the longer game. And I think receiver is the longer game over corner right now. I think Hopkins is 1 year and he's out. So you have to like, you have a 30-year-old Calvin Ridley and then a bunch of questions next year. I think receiver is higher up on that list than corner is. But that's my guess. I don't think they do a running back. There's lots of really good ones in the 7th round. I like those guys, but I don't think they go running back. Not with Spears.
I could
and
see
Pollard.
them go running back just for the sheer fact of, like, a Dylan Labe, who's really good at punt returning. He's a really good runner, really good pass catcher. I could really see if he's still there in the 6th or 7th. Like, to me, that's where it's at. Now, if like an Isaac Guerrero or Marshawn Lloyd is there in like the 4th round, I think that's a distinct possibility for this team. And the reason why
a 3rd string running back.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you, I think it's a real possibility. And I could see it. Running back by committee, those two guys fit a little bit different needs and the different profiles than what those guys that you currently have do. I could see it. I'm not saying I agree. I could see it.
So offensive line, wide receiver, 1st pick, edge rusher, D line, 2nd pick. I think it's wide receiver or corner with the 4th round pick, and then it is a combination of linebacker, safety, running back in the back end there, maybe doubling up on a couple of positions is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Make sure you check out the links in the YouTube comments. We posted them there. You can buy tickets to the Thursday and Friday night events, courtesy of Sinkers Beverages at Track 1 building in Wedgwood, Houston. It is a beautiful, beautiful space with like a huge 90-inch television. We're going to sit around. We're going to have all you can drink, all you can eat. We got a bourbon flight for Friday night, private off-the-record AMAs, Ask Us Anythings, and Q&As, special guests, etc. Friday night's going to be really fun, but totally different vibe. Thursday night's going to be a big old party. We'll have a live show for you guys after the 1st pick and everything for the Titans. So 2 very different events, but all the money's for charity, so make sure you check those out. All brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group, of course. Football and other efforts, stackingtheinbox.com. And coming up right now, by the way, Paul Karski's show is on right now on YouTube, so check that out. You can jump right over to his page and continue to watch more Titans conversation. Otherwise, there we go. I think that's about it for today. Have a great weekend. Go Vols. Roll Tide, right? Bama's got a big game this weekend, of course. You got out Tennessee with a big game this weekend. So enjoy all of that. For Zach, I am Braden. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for all the comments as well. Please share the product. Tell somebody about it. Otherwise, we do appreciate it, man. Really. You guys are the best. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the tournament. We will talk to you on Monday.